Thank you for doing this interview with me today. Just to introduce myself, my name is Annie, and I created Sustainability Beyond the Lab to highlight sustainable research of today and make it more accessible for general audiences, as well as show the barriers that prevent widespread adoption of these technologies. To start, could you also introduce yourself and your research, especially at Cornell?
Of course. Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for having me here. I'm glad to be here. I am Aakash Ahuja. I'm currently a research associate at RF School of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering at Cornell University. Before joining Cornell, I completed my PhD from IIT Bombay, where I worked on developing low-cost, high-energy density, and high cycle life electrode materials for lithium-ion rechargeable batteries. My research focuses on understanding the battery mechanisms, like how batteries work at fundamental level, and more importantly, why they eventually fail, and how we can make them practical. Now, at Cornell, I'm working primarily on sodium-ion rechargeable batteries, which are next-generation sodium-ion batteries, and they are considered a promising alternative for lithium-ion batteries, for especially for large-scale energy storage. And we use advanced characterization techniques to investigate the chemical and structural changes inside the battery while it operates. And we do that to study how the electrode material degrade, like during cycling, and how the interfaces evolve within the battery, and how these processes can affect the long-term cyclability and safety.
Yeah, thank you for that overview.
Yeah.
For audience who might not be familiar with energy storage technology or batteries, why are better battery technologies so important for a transition to renewable energy?
Yeah, like renewable energy sources like solar and wind, they are incredibly important. We know that, right? And but they have one major limitation. They do not produce electricity continuously, right? So the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blows, right? So batteries solve this problem by acting as a bridge, right? So they store the excess energy when the energy is available, and they deliver it when it is needed, which in the sense of like solar energy, they deliver the electricity during the night time. So in that sense, like these are batteries are considered as a bridge between the renewable energy generation and reliable electricity supply, right? They are also like essential for electrifying the transportation. Now we already are familiar that how many electric vehicles are coming up, right? So
Yeah.
they reduce our dependence on the fossil fuels as well, right? Which are mostly they are impacting and accelerating the climate change, right? And they also make our electricity grids more resilient. Another thing is that today's battery technology still face challenges related to cost, safety, and the resource availability. Now we are still improving in terms of resource availability, but environmental impact is also another critical parameter. Uh, so when we talk about developing better batteries, this means to make them more affordable and ultimately help them in accelerate this transition towards this cleaner and more sustainable energy system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've also looked at your research on sodium ion batteries. What
Yeah.
makes sodium batteries a more promising alternative to traditional lithium batteries?
Oh, yes. So, of course, like we know, since this electric vehicle introduction to electric vehicles and all this energy storage, lithium ion batteries are considered the most important form of energy storage systems. They did transform the modern technology, but lithium itself is relatively limited geographically, and the demand for the batteries is increasing rapidly, right? So we do not want to just focus on one type of battery chemistry to solve all of our problems, right? Now, if we consider sodium, then it is one of the most abundant elements on Earth, right? So it is inexpensive, it is widely available, it is not limited by the by limitations of the geographic locations, right?
Mhm.
Where particularly we are dependent on some locations from which we need to source the lithium and other things. Now, which is why we are moving towards sodium. But that being said, it doesn't mean necessarily that sodium ion batteries will replace lithium ion batteries. They are often like seen as a complementary technologies to
Yeah.
lithium batteries. Now, for applications where cost, sustainability, and resource security are more important than maximizing the energy density, then sodium ion batteries are actually an excellent solution. And But the challenge is with the sodium ion battery is their large size. So let's say for lithium, the lithium ion size is around 75, 76 angstrom compared with sodium, which is around 1.0 to 1.06 angstrom, right? So the size of the sodium ion is higher. Now, when we talk about batteries, we in simple terms, we know that during charging and discharging, lithium ions or sodium ions, they move from cathode to anode and they come back.
Mhm.
And the electrons flow through the outer circuit, right? That means when the sodium ion size is larger, right, then it will create additional mechanical stress as compared to lithium because of the larger size. And Now my research focuses on understanding these degradation mechanisms that takes place, so that we can design more stable electrodes that can overcome these limitations.
Yeah.
Because now we cannot change the ionic size of sodium, like we cannot reduce the ionic size, it is fundamental. But then we can design electrodes that can sustain that high size transfer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Based on your explanation of how lithium is kind of a more rare resource, or it's only abundant in certain areas in the world, what makes material selection so important in determining the future of battery technologies, especially as we look for alternatives that rely on more abundant resources such as sodium?
Mhm. Yeah, materials are, when we talk about materials, they are really the foundation of the every battery, right? So the
Mhm.
chemistry of electrode materials that you're using, that determine the all the important performance metrics such as energy density, speed, safety, cycle life, and cost, right? So
Mhm.
even all relatively small changes, such as introducing a small amount of another dopant into a material or into its crystal structure, or engineering its particle morphology or changing the surface chemistry, can dramatically improve the battery performance. So in simple terms, let me give you an example. So if you have a material which is let's say appropriate for the lithium ion storage and transfer. Now if you have sodium which has a larger size, right, how do we improve this material, which so we can introduce a dopant, we can introduce a small another element which has certain properties and effects that can increase the cell volume of the electrode material. Now that same electrode material that was able to sustain that lithium ion with a small size now can handle sodium ion with a bigger size, right? So this is how much the impact the material can have. Now when we understand these concepts at the fundamental level, that what are the changes that take place and how these degradation mechanism take place, so we can design the materials appropriately without going into trial and error. So
Mhm.
much modern battery research is therefore about rational material design. So instead of relying on trial and error, we can try to understand the atomic scale mechanisms that change the battery behavior, and then we can intentionally design the battery materials.
Yeah.
And yeah, so ultimately better batteries start with better materials.
Mhm. Yeah. Your research also involves, as you mentioned, studying how batteries degrade. Why is understanding why batteries fail over time, as well as other challenges such as like cycle life, so important for making better batteries?
Yes, yeah, 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 like every battery is going to degrade over time. So there is no
Mhm.
question about that.
Yeah.
That's going to degrade. Now the question is that whether the degradation takes place, it's like it's why it takes place and how we can slow it down, right? So we need to pinpoint and find the mechanisms that are contributing to the degradation and just solve them so that we can make the batteries last longer. So
Yeah.
inside a battery, we have multiple components, right? We have anode, cathode, we have current collectors that hold the electrode material. Then within the electrode material, we have the active material, which is the active material that stores the lithium or sodium ion. We have
Mhm.
conducting carbon, we have binder, we have electrolyte. And within the electrolyte, we have salts and solvents, right? So inside a battery, there are countless chemical reactions that happen every time when it charges and discharges,
Yeah.
right? So over these all these repetitive cycles, these reaction will change the electrode materials and damage the interfaces and reduce the battery's ability to store the energy, right? So if we only measure capacity loss, if we just measure that after 100 cycles or after 100 days of charging and discharging, right? So if we just measure the capacity loss, we will only know that the battery is failing.
Mhm.
We won't know why. So
Yeah.
that's why this the battery research mainly focuses on uncovering those fundamentals failure mechanisms that uses these advanced experimental techniques. Then once we understand the underlying chemistry and structural evolution, then we can redesign the materials and electrolytes to
Yeah.
minimize the degradation. And then, yeah, so understanding failure of these batteries really the first step toward improving the batteries.
Yeah. Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges that are facing like translating batteries from lab technology into real world deployment? And are they mostly like policy based, based on the scientific innovation itself, or like a combination of factors?
That's actually a very good question. Because there are several major challenges. So some of them are scientific, some of them are purely non-scientific, right?
Mhm.
So if we talk about some scientific challenges, which are obviously necessary to be sorted out, right? So
Mhm.
one is increasing the energy density, right? So
Yeah.
batteries can store more energy without becoming larger or heavier, and which is one of the reasons that sodium ion batteries or other technologies are considered complementary techniques, because lithium ion technology can be used under certain applications where you want to minimize the amount of weight, right? But let's say you want to use battery technology for large scale stationary applications, right?
Mhm.
Applications which do not need to take the battery with them, like electric vehicles, they need battery to move with them, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, you can use different kind of technologies, so all of them are interconnected. But anyways, increasing the energy density is important because we want them to store energy without becoming heavier or larger. Then other one is, of course, the cycle life. So battery can survive thousands of charging and discharging cycles without minimal degradation. And these are some technical parameters, but even in technical parameters, there is safety, which is equally and I believe more important, right?
Yeah.
So under certain conditions, we know that the batteries can undergo thermal runaway. So that can cause heat generation, which accelerates uncontrollably, and which is why we see some of the fire accidents in uh, electric vehicles, right? So that's again more important. So understanding and preventing these failure mechanisms is one of the major area of this research. Then cost can become another challenge,
Mhm.
because these battery technologies need to compete economically with the existing technologies,
Yeah.
because already I am sure you are aware that already we used to employ lead acid batteries, and it took so many decades of this research just for the lithium ion and sodium ion to come up and being replaced, right? So already there are many economically existing technologies that need to be replaced. And then sustainability, like you asked from the second question, right? We understood about the use of sustainable and environmentally benign materials, right? So we
Mhm.
need materials that are abundant, environmentally friendly, but most importantly, ethically sourced from locations while still delivering electrochemical performance. And yeah.
Yeah. That really shows like how complex it is in translating, for example, sodium ion batteries or other energy storage technologies.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
Looking ahead, maybe 10 to 20 years, What developments in batteries or energy storage in general are you the most excited about?
There are many like exciting technologies coming up, So I am excited about the combination of new materials
Mhm.
and new characterization techniques and the use of artificial intelligence. So we all know that AI has definitely improved in a
Yeah.
lot of things, and it can help us understand the mechanisms, especially in the field of research. So now we are able to observe batteries while they are operating under operation using operando techniques that allows
Mhm.
us to directly watch the structural and chemical changes that it undergoes during the cycling. So this provides some insights that were not possible right before. So I'm also optimistic about sodium-ion battery technologies, right? So they becoming commercially established for large-scale energy storage and large-scale stationary energy storage. Uh, Beyond that, apart from sodium-ion batteries, there are many other different battery chemistries. So they are
Mhm.
like solid-state batteries. You might have heard about lithium-sulfur batteries or multivalent batteries, which include zinc ion, calcium ion. So we are employing different elements and different ions, so that they can be used. And then, of course, AI-driven material chemistry is also growing up, right? So they that can be employed in battery chemistry. So rather than like just one technology which is replacing everything else, I think we can see multiple battery chemistries coming up for different applications. And whether that's electric vehicles or portable electric energy storage or large scale grid storage.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything during the interview that we didn't get to discuss that you think is important for people to know about battery research or sustainability in general?
Uh, I think, yeah, we have covered most of it, but still, I would say one one point I would emphasize is that battery research is like fundamentally collaborative. Not just battery research, any research is fundamentally collaborative. Now, developing a better or improved battery is not just like work of chemist and material scientist. It
Mhm.
involves chemical engineers, physicists, computational scientists, manufacturing expert. You will see many times like, there are publications which involve material chemistry. Then you will also see some simulation, that is computational simulations being carried out through density functional theory, DFT, or molecular dynamics, which is MD simulation, right? So all of these things work together, then we are able to
Yeah.
progress. And another thing is that it is like most of the time this progress is incremental. There are not always some dramatic breakthroughs, so there is always some improvement that is going on.
Yeah.
And yeah, this helps to improve the overall growth of this research. Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this interview and sharing both like your research as well as your perspective on battery technologies. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.